You ever wonder why some people are able to pick up a new subject right away and they're able to learn it just like that, immediately, where it takes us a lot of effort, a lot of struggle, and a lot of time to understand that subject that they were able to get right away? We wonder, well, what makes them different? What do they know that I don't know? Why were they able to get it where I wasn't able to get it? Now, a lot of people will say that the secret to learning things faster is by training the mind, conditioning the mind, strengthening the mind. But about 6 months ago, I learned a completely different approach to learning things quickly and easily. And it's not by making a better mind, it's by actually quieting the mind. And this discovery took me from being a complete dummy in a very complex and technical subject to immediately having a turnaround and becoming a master and knowing that subject in depth. I'm going to share that experience with you today and show you how you can quickly pick up new subjects and learn things very, very fast. Check this out. Welcome to the Power of Quiet, the simple way to self-realization. So if you want total control of your mind and more happiness and abundance in your life, then you've come to the right place. So if you're new here, make sure to subscribe. You're going to love what we show you, primarily because it is 100% experiential, meaning you have to take our word for it. But you can just try what we show you and prove it to yourself. See for yourself firsthand just how powerful you are when you get your ego and your mind out of the way. And doing that is easier than you think. Now, if you are a regular here and you love the work that we do, then let us know. Hit the like button below and drop a comment below. Share your experiences with your releasing, what it's done for you in your life. Share some of your gains and any questions that you have. I'll be around and answer whatever I can. So just leave those in the comments below. Now, one of the things that we often look at here on this channel is the value of quieting the mind. After all, that's the name of the channel. It's called The Power of Quiet. And a lot of us on the spiritual path, we recognize that there is a value to quieting the mind. After all the various masters, whether it's Yogananda, Ramana Maharshi, Lester Levinson, Eckhart Tolle, they all have different ways of achieving enlightenment or understanding who the true self really is, and gaining that understanding just by quieting the mind. And whether the mechanism to quiet it comes from meditation, or from prayer, or from breath work, or from releasing, or from being in the now, it's all the same. And it all leads to the same conclusion. All of these different practices just get us into the present moment where we're not thinking, we're just being. Now, this is all well and good, but oftentimes we run into a conundrum, us spiritual seekers, where on one hand we're supposed to quiet the mind, but on the other hand, how do we get stuff done in the world? Especially if we want to learn a very technical and complex subject. How do we do that with a quiet mind? How is that even possible? Well, that's what I discovered about 6 months ago, is the real key and how this all works. So I'm going to share this whole experience with you and show you how you can get your mind out of the way very quickly and easily. And that will put you in a position where if you want to learn a topic, a subject, and get very, very good at it, you can do that very quickly by getting your mind out of the way. All right, so check this out. Now, before we get into this, I just want to point out that most of us, we treat our mind as though it's our best friend. After all, it's been there for as long as we can remember. This voice that's always been there to keep us company, to give us advice, to gather knowledge, gather information, and be able to dissect and put together this information and come up with brilliant conclusions that enable us to do great things in the world. So this is something that we've learned to do as human beings, to develop our mind. We develop it through school. We take these courses like algebra and trigonometry, not because we actually use those particular skills in the world, but it just gets our thinking skills more refined, right? So we value this mechanism, this machine, and this thinking that goes on. But here's the thing. Rarely do we stop and we examine what that mind really does for us, what it really gives us. Because sure, sometimes this little voice in our head, it plays a nice sound. It says nice things. But when we stop and really examine it, we see that at least 90% of the time, that voice in our head is very, very negative. It's always dissatisfied. It's always agitated. It's always distrustful. It's always worried about this thing and that thing. And when things don't go our way, or when we make a mistake, that voice in our head is quick to jump in and say, you know what? Here's my advice for this situation right now. Beat yourself up. And it tells us things like we should beat ourselves up, or we should feel guilty, or we should feel afraid, hundreds of times a day. And so when we really stop and examine what this little voice tells us, we wonder, why do I need to listen to it? And yet, again, we have this conundrum of, well, if I don't listen to it, then how do I get stuff done in the world? How do I be effective in the world and not be a dummy? Well, here's the solution. Now, I want to go back a couple of years, back to 2020, when I was approached by an old acquaintance, a friend, who was also a releaser. This guy had come to a class I did back in 2010, and he had subsequently come to a number of retreats. And this guy was a trader. He was a trader in the markets, and he'd been doing this for nearly 40 years. And he'd started off his career working on the floor of the London Futures Exchange and learning, under the wings of real professionals. And so this guy is a very professional, very accomplished trader. And he had come to me and said that, I'd spent 40 years gathering all sorts of knowledge, but I just kind of simplified it, much like Bruce Lee simplified all various martial art forms into a very simple and practical method that Bruce Lee called Jeet Kune Do, which was just his simple mastery of martial arts. And so I kind of done the same thing with trading. And what I would like to do is just take this picture, this knowledge, this know-how that I have, and show it to others. And plus, one of the biggest impacts that made a huge difference in my trading was releasing. The moment I learned how to release, it instantly quadrupled my profits, and they've gone up ever since. So he said, well, I want to do a class together with you. We're going to combine releasing with trading. And I thought, great, what a wonderful opportunity. And so that's what we did. We did this course, we called it the Money Alchemy course. And it was originally designed to be a 12-week course, where the first 6 weeks was all about releasing. We're examining our beliefs and our feelings about money, fears from past experiences and all that stuff, and just bringing it all up and releasing it, so that when we started to learn the trading, we'd be more open. We'd be like a clean slate with our money consciousness. And so the first 6 weeks went all well and good. But when we got into the second 6 weeks, it's like complete mayhem broke out. We were all nice and chill, but the moment that he opened up a chart and started drawing things on the chart to show us, like, everybody went ballistic. Everybody was like, I don't understand. Why did you draw a line from that point to that point and not this other point to that point? And you said that the line that you drew from here to here is supposed to equal the movement from here to here, but they're not exactly equal. And so why is that? Why is it different? And what do I do about that? And so it's like immediately, before he could even get through an explanation, he's just being bombarded with questions and interruptions. Well, that was a surprise thunderstorm. A little bit damper, but none the worse for wear. Let's get back to the story. So, that's how it all began, was just complete, utter chaos and confusion. Everybody just erupting with questions and doubts and, oh, I'm not getting it, I don't understand. And that was right from day one. And that's why what was originally intended to be a 12-week course turned out to be a better part of 2 years of ongoing training. Now, over those 2 years, I had lots of ups and downs. I had moments of sheer brilliance where I got things so perfectly right that I'm like, oh, I'm so good at this. I'm a god. Versus times when I'm holding my head in my hands thinking, I'm the dumbest person on the planet. And I made every mistake in this profession that's ever been done. From technical mistakes, just getting the analysis wrong, to classic ego mistakes that lots of people experience doing this sort of work, where they even have names for some of these phenomena, like revenge trading. That's where if you take a loss, you get something wrong, it doesn't feel good to lose, and you want to fix that pain right away, usually by jumping into the market in the opposite direction. Well, if it didn't work this way, it must be going that way. And so it's a rash decision that typically makes the situation 3 times worse. Or finding myself in lust, like I'm seeing the market moving, oh, I don't want to miss out on this, and I jump into a trade and I realize, ooh, this is not a good position to be in, and finding myself in a very precarious place to be. Or even finding myself losing, being in a losing trade, but being so stubborn I don't want to close it, don't want to give it up. And that made the situation 10 times worse. So I just made all these classic mistakes, and sometimes I wonder, gee, am I like the worst, dumbest person to ever take on this profession? But over the 2 years, I stayed diligent. I kept working at it. And over time, as I was going through these, this period, there were times when I felt like I'd hit a wall, or I just hit a roadblock. Oh, whatever I'm doing is not working, right? Okay, I need to go back to the training again, right? I need to, go through and listen to the lessons again, pick up some information that I probably missed before, something I didn't understand, and compare it to what I've experienced now and, learn better. And so I went through these course sets of videos from week 6 through 12, where he does the initial training on reading the charts. And I did that at least 3 times in that 2-year period. And each time I got incrementally better, right? So I went through and it's like, okay, I now know a little bit better, I understand a little bit more, and got a little bit better each time. But about 6 months ago, last fall, I hit a roadblock again. And this time, I saw there was an obvious problem, because by this point, I'd gone through those set of lessons a number of times already, absorbed as much as I could out of them, and I'm just still not getting it right. I'm still finding myself in the situation where I'm building up a profit, bit by bit, steadily over several months. And then in one afternoon, I find myself in a position where I just wipe away all those months in just 3 trades. It's like, oh, how do I keep putting myself in the position? Why do I keep, taking 2 steps forward and a step and a half back? And like this, I should be much better by now. And I realized something. I realized that in this position, whatever information that I had in my head, it just wasn't working for me. There was something faulty in here. And so I made a decision. I did something that Lester did when he started his journey to enlightenment. And this is something that I tell when I tell Lester's story about his journey. You see, when the doctors told Lester after his second massive heart attack that he had only 2 weeks to live, and they couldn't do anything for him, so they were sending him home to die. The first thing that Lester said to himself when he went home was, Lester, you're stupid, stupid, stupid. And the reason why I said that was because up until that point, he had spent his whole life as a scientist studying to understand what made the whole universe tick. He studied physics and engineering and mathematics and economics and medicine and psychology and psychiatry, all the pursuits of man to understand life using the mind. And what Lester realized, that all the knowledge that he'd accumulated, number one, didn't get him the answers that he was looking for, and number two, just got him to the place where he was a dead man. So that's why I said, Lester, you're stupid, stupid, stupid. You've just been barking up the wrong tree this whole time. And what he decided to do at that point was, being a scientist, he realized, well, if the formula isn't working, I gotta wipe the whole slate clean and start from scratch. And that's what I decided to do. At that moment, I realized that whatever information I had in here isn't getting me the results that I'm looking for. So I just got to wipe the whole slate clean and now start from scratch. And so I went back to those core set of videos again for like the 4th or 5th time this time, but this time with a difference. Instead of going back and comparing it to my experiences and what I've already learned and and trying to fit in the pieces, I just approached it from a point of, I'm not thinking about anything. I'm just going to just stay quiet and just watch. I'm not going to try to analyze or compare, contrast. I'm just going to watch. And that's what I did. So video after video, I was just watching. And I realized, after having watched 5 or 6 videos, that it just dawned on me. As I'm listening to him go into detail, I'm understanding every single thing he's talking about, down to the last little detail. I understand everything. Whereas before, it's like there's so much that was still a mystery to me. But in a quiet mind, I got everything that he was saying. And I realized it was such a huge difference to my approach before. Because here's what was going on before. All the other times when I was learning the traditional way. And this is the way we all learn, right? See, we all, when we want to learn a new subject, especially something that we're very interested in, we have a lot of enthusiasm for, that our mind just erupts with questions. Oh, what about this? What about that? And, oh, that's interesting. I want to know more about that. And so we keep thinking about what it is that we're learning and trying to assimilate information, piece it together, and come up with conclusions, a framework about this topic so then we can apply it. Sound familiar? I mean, this is basically our approach of using our mind to learn a new subject. But what I realized was that as I'm trying to learn something and my mind is coming up with questions, well, what about this? What about that? And How is this going to be like in real life when I'm trading? And what would I do in this situation? I'm trying to imagine, off into the future, certain scenarios, and, oh, what about this? What about that? The more I'm listening to this voice, the less I'm listening to the instructor's voice. And this is drowning out the real instruction. And also, because of my reliance on the mind, because to most of us, the mind is our best friend, right? We rely on it. I'm relying on it to come up with conclusions and decisions and working this stuff out that I'm absorbing. The problem is I realized that I came up with a whole bunch of wrong conclusions that I couldn't even see, having gone through these videos, like I said, 3 or 4 times already. I still didn't hear them right. But this time, when my mind was quiet, I heard them crystal clear. And I realized, oh, he's telling me the exact opposite of what I decided how it all worked. And he's saying it right there. Ah, I didn't even hear him before, even though I'd listened to this again and again and again. And also I realized something else. My mind, just like I said, all of our minds, it's a very negative entity. It's a very negative voice. It likes to complain, it likes to criticize, it likes to judge. And I saw before how many criticisms and judgments I had about the teaching and about the instructor, where, oh, he's talking too fast, or he's not completing a thought or a sentence. He's jumping from one thing to another, and it's hard to follow. And plus, oh, he's from the east side of London. I can't even understand what the heck he's saying half the time anyway, that thick accent. And it wasn't just me that had those thoughts. I heard everybody else in the class vocalize the exact same thoughts. And again, the more I'm listening to these complaints and criticisms, I don't even hear the instruction. And it just blew my mind this last time that I was going through and watching these videos again, without even thinking, with turning that voice off. Before, I had all of these problems with the instruction, where, oh, it's too fast, I don't understand. Oh, he's not a good teacher. He doesn't explain things the way I need to hear it. This time around, as I'm just listening, I realized, gee, he's saying it perfectly clear. He's crystal clear. He couldn't even be saying it better. It was just a night and day difference. And so as I continued on watching these videos, I constantly have been reminding myself not to latch on to anything mentally, because I could see the tendency to want to start remembering information and start formulating decisions. Okay, this is the way things work, and this is the way things work in this situation, and try to compartmentalize this information and store it in the mind. But instead, I just stayed focused on just letting go and just continuing, emptying my mind and watching, observing. Whether I'm observing, watching a video, one of the old training videos, or observing myself real-time trading. And just being in the moment and just observing. And as I've continued this approach, continued keeping my mind off on the side, not engaged with the activity, it just kept me in the moment. And it just kept me in the state of all-knowingness. There's nothing that this needs to conclude or know mentally, but by letting go of the mind, it's like tapping into a much higher intelligence that just sees things clearly as they are, not as this thing thinks that they are. And basically, from this time, from the last 6 months, I've watched a real transformation, a mastery show up that's effortless. And it's like a solid picture of now I see myself as a professional trader and seeing myself in a position where after just 3 years, I have the same competence and knowingness as someone who's been doing this their whole life. It's just been absolutely amazing, and it's effortless and it's freeing, most of all. Another thing that I noticed, the difference between this approach of just observing and keeping my mind off on the side, is how heavy that thought and that figuring it out is. It really weighs you down, and it's a real chore to do that. And it makes the whole thing just not so fun. So it's just a whole different thing. Now, this story, it relates to a key lesson that we teach here. And it's one of the ways that we learn how to release. And we call it letting go of figuring things out. If you've been around here before, undoubtedly you're familiar with this way of releasing. You see, the way that the mind works basically is it says, hey, I'm your friend, I'm your best buddy, you could trust me, and anytime you don't know what to do, I'll help you out. I'll show you how to find that answer. And so we trust our mind, and it sends us all over the place. All right, let's go read this book. Let's go listen to this expert. Let's go listen to this TED Talk or whatever. And so we go all over the place trying to get the information and try to figure out what the answer is, trying to get a solution. And so we look over here, we look over there, and we still don't find the answer. We still don't achieve the objective that we're looking for. And so what does our friend the mind say at that point? When we looked all over the place and we still don't have the answer, our best friend now says, all right, well, you haven't been able to figure it out. Here's my advice. Beat yourself up. Now again, what kind of a friend is that? Why do we listen to this thing when it tells us to beat ourselves up and we follow along with it? We trust it so much. Is it really out for our good? And we still don't have the answer anyway. We just dug ourselves into a pit of despair. So the way to turn this around, and like I said, this is something that we often do. You probably have done this before, but now I'm presenting a bigger picture to applying this and not just making this a little bit of a release, but integrating this into your life and using this in a big way. All right? So here's how we do it. Now, if you're new here, I'll show you how to do it. Think about something that you've been working on, that you've been struggling with. You've been trying to figure out, okay, how do I be successful in this? How do I get this goal? Whatever. Take a look to see what you've been trying to figure out. All right, you got something in mind? And it might be something that you've been trying to figure out for a long time. Years, maybe even decades. Now, a lot of times we're not discriminating. We've been trying to figure something out, sometimes for decades. And here we are, still trying to figure it out. And that's tantamount to going to an empty drawer that's completely empty, and we open it up. All right, is the answer in there? Oh, no, it's empty. But then we keep going back to that empty drawer again and again and again, looking for an answer that isn't there. And that's basically what we're doing all this time that we're trying to figure out how to do something. All right, so here's a way to just nip that in the bud and get a little bit of discrimination here. All right, so ask your mind if it knows an answer, if it knows what to do, if it has a solution for you. Just ask it. Does it know? It doesn't. If it did, you wouldn't be still trying to figure it out. You'd have your result already. So your mind doesn't know. And a lot of times we ignore that, but when we look, it's obvious. All right, so if your mind doesn't know, then you can stop looking in that empty drawer now. Now, chances are you've been beating yourself up because you haven't been able to find a resolution to this, right? Now, how does it help you to beat yourself up? Is that going to get you the answer that you're looking for? Is that going to get you your goal? Of course not. And who's doing that? Now, don't go blaming your mind. I mean, of course, we have this negative voice that says, oh, you should beat yourself up. But who's it talking to? And who goes, okay, yeah, I guess I'll do that? You. I mean, just stop for a moment and just notice, who is that voice? Who is that mind talking to? It's talking to someone. Who? Now that part of you, it has no name, no face, no body. It just is. It's just pure awareness. And it always is, always has been, and always will be. And that thing is much bigger than the mind. And that's the thing that the mind's talking to in the first place. And that you is the you who's in charge. And so now you can act like it. You can act like the boss now. So if it doesn't help you to beat yourself up, and you're the one who's doing it, what do you decide to do now? Do you decide to be positive and love yourself? Or be negative and beat yourself up? What do you decide? What's a smarter choice? All right, well, I'm assuming you're deciding to be positive. So take a look. See if you've been disapproving of yourself, right? Have you? Now, if you're doing it, it's just a decision. Yes or no? Could you let that go? Could you let go of disapproving of yourself? Yes or no? And could you let go of disapproving of yourself a little bit more? And could you let go of disapproving of yourself a little bit more? And could you let that go a little bit more? And would you rather be positive and love yourself, or would you rather be negative and beat yourself up? Again, which is more likely to get you to a solution? By being negative or being more positive? And who's it up to? So could you let go disapproving of yourself a little bit more? And could you let that go a little bit more? And a little bit more. And could you let that go even more? And some more. And could you let that go even more? And even more. And how do you feel now? Now, all we're looking for is just a lighter feeling. Just notice, you feel a little bit lighter? A little bit more positive? Notice the difference? And this is what you can demonstrate when you take yourself off of automatic, off of the habit of listening to your mind, and you realize who's really in charge. You're in charge. You make the decision. And by making the decision, you feel so much better. Now, since positive doesn't hurt anything, could you give yourself some love and approval now? For no reason, just because. And could you give yourself a little bit more love and approval? And could you give yourself a little bit more love and approval? And a little bit more. And some more. And could you give yourself even more love and approval? And even more. Now see if you've been disapproving of your mind. Maybe you realize that that noise box has been driving you crazy. It's been acting very negative, and you want it to shut up. But the more you disapprove of it, does that make it quieter or does that make it more noisy? Now what do you decide? Do you decide to fight with it and hate on it? Or do you decide to be positive and love it? Now could you let go disapproving of your mind? And could you let go disapproving of it a little bit more? And some more. And even more. And could you let go disapproving of it even more? And could you let go judging it? Oh, it's stuck, it's stupid, it's damaged. Could you let go disapproving of it some more? And a little bit more. And even more. And a little bit more. And now, could you give your mind some approval? Just love it. No matter what it says, could you love it anyway? And could you give it a little bit more approval? And could you love it some more? And even more. And take a look at this situation, this endeavor that you've been trying to master or figure out, and see if you've been disapproving of that. Oh, I can't get it right. Oh, it's so frustrating. It's difficult. It's hard. I'm never going to get it. Oh, I don't know why I started it. Well, if you're disapproving of it, is that going to make you successful at it? So could you let go disapproving of this goal, this endeavor of yours? And could you let go disapproving of it some more? And even more. And more. And even more. And even more. And could you give it some approval? Regardless of if you're ever successful at it or not, could you just love it anyway? Why not? Right? Because positive doesn't hurt anything, right? Or could you give it some more approval? And more. And even more. And even more. And see how you feel now. Now, when you take a look at this thing that you're looking to accomplish or master, see if it's more possible for you to do that now than it was a few minutes ago. Notice the difference? You might just simply notice a subtle sense inside of, I can. I don't know exactly how, I don't have exact answer yet, but I know I can find a way. Right? There's maybe just more of a sense of I can. Or you might just get an instant, ooh, that's my answer. Something clear and concrete, just shows up spontaneously. Might even notice that. But either way, see if it's more possible for you now to accomplish this thing. Now, what you're talking to is an intelligence that's far greater than that mind ever could be. And that all-knowingness is yours to have right now if you just get your mind out of the way. So again, what all these great masters have been showing us and have been telling us is not to add more to the mind, but to just erase everything from the mind. And as we do so, our understanding and our abilities in the world just expand. We're able to take on more and more and more. We don't get dumber. We get more smarter, you might say. And it's effortless. So, this is something to practice moving forward and really integrate it into your life. Not just make it a little bit of a releasing practice, but take it seriously and adopt this strategy with everything that you're doing. Now, it does take practice. And if you want assistance in practicing this so that you can get good at it really fast, getting out of your mind and just allowing beingness to bring all the answers for you, then join us this June for the Wealth Mastery course, because we're going to spend 6 weeks bringing up all of our knowledge about money and everything that we know about it and just erasing all that knowledge. Because behind all of that is a real knowingness. And what Lester said is, anyone who can demonstrate $1 can demonstrate $1 million. The mind sets the size. The thing is that if your mind is cluttered up with a bunch of information that's not working for you, or even a bunch of information that you think is working for you, it's very difficult to add 6 zeros onto that $1 bill. But you're going to see how easy it is. Once you clear out your mind, you get a perfect picture of exactly what Lester's talking about. And whatever goal that you have for lots of abundance or anything else is immediately clear to you once you get your mind out of the way. So prove that to yourself. Join us for this new 6-week course. It's very powerful. I'll put a link to it up above, also on the description right below. Check it out.